Welcome to Inside Steelers Nation. I am Randy Slack with Dale Lolley, Matt Williamson joining us shortly. I can't believe that we're not talking about the AFC Championship game this week. I can't believe...
Oh, we could talk about it if you'd like.
Oh, I can't believe we're not talking about it with the Steelers being in that game. An extremely disappointing loss. I know that people were talking about the Tim Tebow and the 94 team against the San Diego Chargers and things of that nature, but to get beaten the way they did, 45-42, to Blake Bortles and the Jacksonville Jaguars, shocking and shocking. I think that's the correct word for what happened yesterday.
Yeah, I guess, in large part, I think when we talked about it, we said, how could the Jaguars win this game? And turnovers. Mm-hmm. That was one way that we looked at and said, if the Steelers go out and turn the football over a bunch of times and the Jaguars score off of those, then that's one way that the Steelers could lose. And they basically gave them 14 points with 2 turnovers.
Yep.
And, it definitely hurt the Steelers. And the defense just it didn't show up. I mean, they were there. They were on the field. They were gashed, though. I mean, the Jaguars just had a better game than the Pittsburgh defense did.
Yeah, if there is one silver lining to this game, I guess it would be whichever guy or whichever part of the team that you don't like, whether you don't like Mike Tomlin or you don't like Ben Roethlisberger or Todd Haley's play calling or Mike Mitchell. There's a little bit of something for everybody as far as taking the blame. Nobody. Antonio Brown maybe had a good game, but I feel like everybody else.
There were some guys who did some things in that game. I thought Joe Hayden played well. I thought he made some plays. You mentioned Antonio Brown. I thought Le'Veon Bell played well. Roethlisberger played well outside of the 2 turnovers, and he almost had a couple others that were picked off. But he played well down the stretch for sure. I thought the offensive line did a reasonably good job keeping him clean. 2 sacks against that defense, and again 60 pass attempts. That's pretty good. But there just wasn't enough, and it's a team game. And if you have some breakdowns in some areas. It's just not going to add up to a win. That's just the way it is.
All year long, this one of the hallmarks of the Steeler team has been if one side of the ball isn't performing well, or if the passing game's not performing well, if the running game picks it up, or if the defense isn't doing well, the offense can kind of carry the load. And this week, we didn't really get that. I mean, the offense put up a lot of points, but at the same time, they, basically gave away 2 touchdowns. With the sack, scoop and score, which again we knew was a very likely thing that could happen with this team because that's one of the things the Jags do well. It's one of the things they kind of rely on for points at times.
Yeah, and I mean they had 7 defensive or return touchdowns during the season. Of course, 2 of those were against the Steelers. They had 1 yesterday. They had the other was an interception at the 18-yard line. You are still allowed to stop them from scoring from there, and the Steelers' defense didn't do that. In fact, it only took them 1 play to score from there. So, it just was not a good game. There's plenty of blame to go around. I don't get automatically you have to fire this guy or fire that guy. The Steelers will take their time. They'll sit back. They'll look at the season as a whole, and then they'll decide what to do moving on. It's not like this offseason starts tomorrow or today. They've got some time to think about these things. They're not going to make a knee-jerk reaction like many of the fans. I've seen everybody on the team being mentioned as being fired, cut. It's just amazing to me. I get it that people are fans and they have those kind of reactions, but the Steelers do not work that way. So Mike Tomlin's not going to be fired. We'll see what happens with the coordinators. The contracts are up there. Maybe they'll decide to part ways. Maybe they won't. I don't happen to think that either one of those guys did a bad job this year. I think that it just didn't work out in this particular game. I think everybody looks at the Jaguars. Well, they lost to the Jaguars. Well, they lost to the Jaguars twice this season. So maybe you can look at it and say, you know what, the Jaguars were the better team this year. Or they were just a bad matchup.
That's true. As the week progresses, we'll talk more about the future going forward with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But right now, I think we're just going to talk about what the heck happened yesterday. This is Inside Steelers Nation on SNR. Welcome back to Inside Steelers Nation. I'm Randy Slack with Dale Lolley. Matt Williamson joining us very shortly, I'm told. The weather's a little tricky outside. It's snowing again, which is awesome. I want to start this segment, and this might be the only time I do this today, is I want to defend the decision that the coaching staff made. I'm totally in agreement with deferring to the second half.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody, I've been hearing from regular average Joe people to other sports talk show hosts that say, I can't believe you give them the ball first. Well, let's be realistic here. Blake Bortles, as we talked about all last week, stinks. He really didn't change much after that game. I know they scored a lot of points, but you have to believe that your defense can go into that game and get a stop at the beginning. And then you'd ideally get the ball with a shorter field when you're going up against the Jacksonville defense. And, oh, by the way, even if the game works out the way it did, where you fall behind 21-0, by getting the ball at the second half, you were able to get 2 for 1 and jump from 28-7 to 28-21 really quickly because you scored right at the end of the second quarter and right at the beginning of the third. So I know that for some reason that's a big sticking point that everybody's upset that they elected to defer, but I don't think of all the things that happened yesterday, I thought that was the right call, and I think that was the least of the Steelers' problems.
Yeah, that's 80th on my list of complaints. I just sat down on what all you guys talked about.
I just went into that saying that that was the one thing, maybe one of the only things I agreed with the coaching staff, what they did.
On Friday, I was here sitting down with Stan, and he just happened to be the topic, and so we were going back and forth. And in the end, I'm like, I really don't care. Generally speaking, I want the ball in to start the second half as a rule of thumb. So overall, I don't have a problem with that. You would think that the Jags would get the ball, be a little wide-eyed in a crazy environment. It's cold, it's loud, there's towels flying, there's Shazier up on the Jumbotron, 3 and out. I mean, I think that's a general way of thinking, assuming that the team wouldn't have been blown away by, wow, they're going to run a lot of double teams at the point and run with an interior run game with Fournette and then take play action shots short off of that, because that's all this team does. But the defense looked like they didn't have any clue that was going to happen. So that's the complaint, not heads or tails.
Yeah, I heard you talking earlier today, Matt, with Mark Madden about the Jags aren't exactly a very tricky team to figure out.
I think they're the easiest team on both sides of the ball in the league to prepare for.
We knew that on defense just because they're so talented that they don't need to go with any smoke and mirrors at all because of who they have. And then kind of on the opposite on offense, they have so little that they really were like, let's find one thing to do and do that.
Right, and that's not even a complaint for them. If I was the Jags GM, obviously what they're doing on defense is great. Execution-based. Don't get cute. Don't blow a coverage because you're doing an exchange that you shouldn't. So that's great. And on offense, it's because they have no choice. Their quarterback is limited, to say the least. They have to hide him. The Eagles hid Foles yesterday. Hiding your quarterback is good coaching, but you should know that. To me, the critical error that was made, not when the Steelers had the ball. I mean, because the Steelers didn't out-scheme them for all those points. It wasn't like they had receivers running free all day because they had all these great cover 3 beaters. They had great individual plays, amazing individual plays that gets lost today because, I mean, some of the things Ben and AB and those guys did was unbelievable against a phenomenal defense. But on the other side of the ball, to come out and look overwhelmed with what they were throwing at you, to me, is unexcusable because everyone in the world knows what they throw at you.
Yeah, I talked to some guys today about that, specifically about the opening drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, were you guys expecting them to use as much play action as they did? It was 4 straight play action passes that they hit them with. Short ones, but they turned into big plays. 20-yard gains, 16-yard gain, 19-yard gains. And they said, no, we came out thinking they were going to kind of try to establish the running game. And, I mean, that was a legitimate thought, but you can't allow guys to leak out and just, Jacksonville running the tight end into the flat was not a surprise to anyone if you watched the Jaguars.
10 times last week.
Right.
They do it every week because it's an easy throw for Bortles, and it's the only throws he can make.
Yeah, and
one doesn't have to be exclusive from the other.
No,
we thought they were going to run.
You can stop both.
Right.
You're allowed to do that.
Couldn't allow the short passing game to beat you. I mean,
and it's I looked at some of the things that they gave up. The big play down the middle of the field that Artie Burns gave up. Where's no safety help. That you can't expect. There aren't many NFL corners that are going to win a lot of the time in that situation when there's no safety help back there and the quarterback can just throw the ball to the middle of the field and allow the receiver to go get it.
Yeah,
that's a tough play, a tough situation.
You're putting your guy in a bind.
You're putting your guy, and they tried several. That was like the third time that they had tried that shot, and they finally hit on one. So they were 1 for 3 in that situation. But they were able to do that because they were winning at the line of scrimmage, and especially in the first half. And the Steelers had to adjust. They did it. I saw people saying, "Well, they haven't adjusted." No, they adjusted in the second half. They, in early downs, they were taking Artie Burns off the field and subbing in Robert Golden to get bigger get a little bigger on the field. So they were going to the 3 safety package. And the Jaguars didn't run the ball as effectively in the second half as they had early in the football game, but they had the lead. They could milk the clock a little bit. They could try some stuff that was outside the box. They could try a deep pass down the field because if it gets intercepted or it's an incompletion, we've got the lead. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to. We're not even here. We're not trying to get the lead. We're in the lead, and so if we hit this play, great. If we don't, so be it.
The Jags got a lot. The Jags played well. I'm not taking away from them. They deserved to win. But I thought the Steelers lost this game more than the Jags won it. And they got many gifts yesterday. Jacksonville did. But the biggest one, like you said, was the early lead. We said this all last week, that this could be a game if you get down early. And to be overwhelmed on that first drive on defense against their bread and butter, and then to try to get cute on your first couple drives on offense, well, you're setting yourself up to get down early, as opposed to – hand the ball to Levin, don't go empty. That kind of stuff. But, the thing I harped on last week that I couldn't have been more wrong about, and I don't regret saying it, is I said the Steelers' defensive line versus the Jags, the 300-pounders. All the 300-pounders when the Jags had the ball, I thought was the number one advantage Pittsburgh had in this game.
I did as well.
And they lost that one. And it wasn't because of scheme. Those guys were better than our guys on that day. And maybe they wouldn't be 10 times in a row. They aren't great football players, but their interior offensive line played really well. Bortles had no pressure on him in this game.
And even when he did, he ran out of it.
Yeah.
And I think those designed runs, I don't know how much those designed runs and the couple times that he did escape pressure. There was one play, especially late in the game, I recall, where the Steelers, it seemed like they were really intent on not allowing him to get out of the pocket, where they rushed, but they didn't rush as hard as they would have.
There's definitely some mush rushing in that game, which they should.
Yeah. But in that situation, he then hit, I think it was a 3rd and 9, and he completed the pass over the middle against William Gay, who, he
doesn't need to be on the field anymore.
He shouldn't have been on the field, and B, shouldn't be here anymore after this. All due respect to William.
He's had a great career here. He's been a helpful Steeler.
He's played a long time. And done, been a part of some really good teams, but he can't run anymore, and it happens to every player.
Even Blake Bortles and we can laugh at guys like Bortles and Foles. They're still NFL players, and they didn't get there by accident.
Right,
and their coaching staffs, if they see William Gay on the field, the guy in the headset's going to be like, look his way.
Yeah, find him.
Let alone a Brady.
Again, it goes back to I go back to a statement Antonio Brown made to me. This is like in 2012. You look for the sweet matchup. You look for the candy bar.
Yeah, right.
And in that situation, he's the candy bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. The thing that I tweeted this in an hour before the game, I expect the Steelers to rush 3 a lot and drop 8 into coverage. And my logic with that was, first off, I thought Hayward, Tuitt, Hargrave, whomever, Alualu, would have an advantage over their guys in one-on-one matchups. And even if you don't get home, I want Bortles to sit in the pocket and hold the ball as long as possible because that's when bad things happen. And if you drop 8 into coverage, he's always going to be – he's one of those quarterbacks that, where's that 8th guy? I don't know where he is. I'm thinking, and they didn't do it once.
And the problem was that the offense didn't play well off the defense together. You think about some of the situations, the partially blocked punt, for example. The Steelers get the ball on their side, on Jacksonville's side of the 50, they can't get a first down. They can't move the ball, at least even in the field goal range in that situation. That allowed Bortles, at one point, from midway through the second quarter until midway through the third quarter, he was 0 for 5 throwing the football. He was
started to look like himself.
He was 2 for 6 in the second half until the fourth quarter. I mean, he went through a period of time where he couldn't complete a pass. The 2 passes that he completed in the third quarter were both screen passes, and they both went for first downs.
That's on him being a great quarterback.
That's not him being a great quarterback. That's him, completing a pass that you or me or Randy could complete.
Yes,
or should complete.
And people were saying today, boy, Bortles played really well. No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
He maybe made one throw that was like, oh, nice throw.
Yeah.
And I read a stat today. He had 3 completions yesterday where his intended target was 10 yards or deeper.
Yeah.
I mean, NFL quarterbacks should make everything within 10 yards, especially play action and your goofy tight end or Yeldon or Fournette's wide open. I mean, that's a dump off. We can make those throws, like you said. He didn't turn the ball over, and that's gigantic.
He tried a couple of times.
He tried a couple times, right. And the 2 turnover differential was big. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I don't know. I mean, to me, this is one of the most disappointing losses I can remember.
I've seen far worse than this.
I don't know. I think the Steelers gave this one to them.
I don't rank this anywhere near losing to the San Diego Chargers in the AFC Championship in '94.
Yeah, you're going back a ways.
I don't rank this anywhere near.
How about Tebow?
I don't rank this anywhere near losing to Tebow. I don't rank this anywhere near losing to the Patriots in 2001 when you gave up 2 returns for touchdowns that lost you that game. I mean, those were games where the Steelers were favored by in double digits. This is a team that beat you earlier in the season.
I think I'm having a short memory on this. All this
talk about the Steelers, even a Denver AFC Championship. They had beaten Denver in Pittsburgh earlier in the season, and they go out and get smoked, but lose to them in the AFC Championship in '97. So I don't rank those in that necessarily as it's a disappointing loss. There's no doubt about it. This is a team that they should have beaten. But they didn't beat them twice, so now I start to look at it and say, okay, maybe Jacksonville is just a bad matchup for them.
Well, I think there's some truth to that. But, like Crawley was just asking me, where does this compare to the Tebow game? And I said the Tebow game was highly disappointing, but I think they went into that game saying, we want Tebow to complete throws because he can't. And he happened to do it on that day. That wasn't necessarily the Steelers' fault. I mean, I agree with the way they game planned for that. And he completed 11 balls, and a couple of them broke your back. But usually he doesn't. He happened to on that day. To me, that's not as bad as we know what they're going to do, and we look like we have never seen it before.
Yeah, they didn't learn from their mistakes. To me, that's the problem from the game is we turn the ball over a lot, and we let Leonard Fournette run on us, and then they play him a second time. They turned the ball over twice, which killed them for 2 scores, and then they let the Jags run the ball, and it's just like, did you not learn anything? Did you just think because you'll show up the second time that you'd have a better outcome because you have more talent overall than they do? Well, it didn't happen.
No, not at all.
More to come on Inside Steelers Nation on SNR.